Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. In just under 3 weeks, I'm heading off to Nottingham Warhammer World for the Throne of Skulls doubles event. And I'm really excited and I thought I would share my progress so far.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club, your event or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
A lot of my videos are hobby tutorials or reviews or things at the end of a project, and this is something in the middle of a project. I've done probably a little more than half of the painting that I need to do. There's not a lot left. It's only 1,000 points each for doubles, and I've completed the display board, which you'll see in this video in its entirety, and even how I did it, but very sped up. It's not going to be a full tutorial in that sense, but it's still fun, and I know a lot of people who like the bigger project videos on the channel would probably appreciate seeing that. But this is a Renegade Crowns project that will go beyond this doubles event. So I want to talk a little about what I've done now and what I'd like to do in the future, because it's always fun to hear in the comments what you would suggest, how you'd build it. Originally, I was going to take my Null army and finish that off for this event, but chatting with my partner for the event, we decided that Renegade Crowns would be a fun thing to do. Well, I decided I'd like to do it, and he was very, very open to it, and it didn't change what he was taking. He's taking Empire anyway. But I needed to check whether I could take Renegade Crowns because, as you may well know, there's nothing around allies in the Arcane Journal. So they're technically a letter of the law until the FAQ, which isn't out at the time of recording this, and I'm assuming it's in there, they can't ally to anyone. So I emailed the events team to ask if what I assumed was going to happen would happen. And as you can see from this email response, they made a ruling on it, so which is good news. It meant I can take Renegade Crowns. As I've already mentioned, I'm doing this for fun. My partner Danny and I want to go and have a fun time with armies with theme and just have a laugh and play some Warhammer. I missed the last doubles event. I couldn't make it last year, and I think it was a bit of a mix. There were people that went with that attitude of themey armies and other people that took something a little bit stronger. That's fine, I don't mind, whatever we come against. If we lose all 5 games, I don't think we really mind. We're just enjoying painting these armies and building these armies, which will expand on existing armies. Danny's expanding on his Marienburg army, and I'm starting this Renegade Crowns journey, and that's all I really care about. I loved the last Throne of Skulls event I went to. It was a Middle-earth one, and it was very much people turning up with thematic armies and display boards and things. And so I'm bringing that kind of energy to it. Not everyone will, and that's fine as well. We all game in different ways. Now, my list isn't good, as you will see here. It's not really very well balanced for a 1,000 points list, because 300 points of it are taken up by the Bone Grinder Giant, which just gets in on the percentages because they're using open war for this. And I'm not too worried about that. Would I take that as a 1,000-point game against someone else? Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'll swap that out for something else, but I just really wanted to take the miniature. And there is a theme for this, and I'll show you some of the miniatures I've been painting and working on in a moment, but the theme is miniatures I want to take mostly. So we have a Renegade Prince there with full plate armor and handgun because the miniature's got one, on foot because the miniature is on foot. The Outcast Wizard that you'll have maybe seen is my previous painting tutorial, the previous video to this one. She is an outcast from Cathay, so I've gone with a theme there. The 23 veteran sellswords are using Manan's Blades miniatures because I love them and I want to use them. The Empire Archers are actually using Halfling Archer miniatures because I love them and I want to use them. The Border Prince's Mortar, again, I'm using Halflings. I'm using the Hot Pot. I'll show you that in a moment. The Border Prince's Bombard is a miniature that I painted for Bretonia, and I've just added a new crew member. Again, you'll see that later in the video, and of course it's ending off with that Bone Grinder Giant, which I also did as a painting video on this channel recently. And here are some of the finished miniatures. The Bone Grinder Giant, which has been a painting video very recently. I'll try to remember to put links in the video now for those of you who may be interested in watching. And then of course the Cathayan themed Outcast Wizard little kit bash that I made and painted, and that was the video previous to this one again. So if you want to go and see how I did that, you can watch me painting that miniature. But then harping back to some of the miniatures I've painted quite a while ago on the channel, and I use these in my Empire army and lumping groups fighting cocks. Fantastic miniatures. Then of course afterwards we have the halfling hot pot, which I'll be using as the Renegade Crowns mortar, and for the bombard I'll show that a little bit later on because I've added a new crew member. Of course there are bits that I haven't painted yet as well. My Renegade Lord, I'm going to be using the Forge World character here. It comes in the Forge World command set. I love the Forge World style sculpts, love their faces, and he's perfect for it. I've also got my unit of Manan's blades here, which I've had in a box for years now. I really want to get some paint on them for ages, and I think this is the perfect opportunity of doing it. And again, I'll be able to use all of these miniatures in other armies, and that's part of the plan for my Renegade Crowns project, is to be able to use them in other armies. Some of them already come from other armies and have been borrowed, and I think that's great fun. Of course, I mentioned plans for the future as well, and I've picked up these. Well, I didn't pick them up, I got them for my birthday. My wife ordered them when the pre-order went up, well, when the made to order went up. These are the old Empire handgunners, are the only things that I wanted from that set, and these are just great. So I'm going to be adding these at some point, but they're not for my 1,000 points doubles list, but it just shows that the ideas I have about adding miniatures I want in this army for fun really, but I'll also be able to use them in other projects moving forward. And the rest of my choices are going to be built around the miniatures I want to use as well. The first of those is the Free Guild Marshal from Age of Sigmar. Absolutely love this miniature, wanted to have an excuse to do something with it. Need to convert it, lots of Age of Sigmar bits to remove it, but I've got some ideas of how I might use him expanding this army for the next 1,000 points. I'm not sure if I'll become a Renegade Prince and become the general of my army, replacing my existing one, or just a Renegade Captain and have him leading a unit of cavalry, which was probably what I'm leaning towards at the moment. And I love the idea of having a unit of 10 veteran free blades and basing them around the lovely Free Guild Cavalier miniatures. I think they're really cool. Again, lots of work on them. I don't want them to look like AOS miniatures, so I'm going to be replacing an awful lot of the riders, mixing in Bretonnian bits, mixing in Empire bits, but I think they would be a really, really fun modelling project. And then finally, I really want to use the Free Company Militia Kit. It's not in my Empire armies. It's a big value box. I love it. It's got lots of nostalgia for me, but I'm not sure whether just to use them as militia and have a big brick of them like that. And that works really well with that sort of naval theme I've got going on. And the naval theme will continue for sure, apart from those mounted knights. But I might also convert them as well and give them spears and just make them veteran sellswords, and thrusting spears would probably make them a slightly better unit as well. So I'm unsure there. Both nice things, both nice ideas, but those are some of the things percolating in my brain at the moment. So if anyone's got any ideas, please let me know in the comments. I'm still open to suggestions at the moment of what to add to that army. As I said, I'm not worried about competitiveness at all really. I want thematic and fun. However, if I can do both and make it at least something that can sort of hold its ground on the table a little bit, that would be good as well. So now it's time to take you back in time a little bit to the starting of the planning of the board. And you can see here on the end of my gaming table, at that stage I had the army set up. There's a couple more things painted now, and the sort of early stages of it. Planning it out, the bits of paper represent my partner's units, and I've got a picture frame there, a big old one, some grass matting, and a lake town kit. And this is one of the best kits that they make in my opinion. Ray Dramfield has done a lot of the terrain work for Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game. I believe he did the Sky Lantern basket and balloon part, not the crew. I just think he's awesome. You don't hear him talked about anywhere near as much as all the famous sculptors they have there, but I think the stuff he does is always top notch. So at this stage I've cut the grass mat to fit the inside of that picture frame, and I'm just drawing on where I think a little coastline would be, because I like the idea that this board will be that the mercenary army, my army, has just come off its ship ashore, but maybe not in the main docks, because the Marienburgers don't want to let the public know that they're giving money to a mercenary army that includes a bone-grinder giant in there. So the idea is that maybe it's the rough end of town, the muddy side of the docks, maybe where some of the smaller fishermen bring in their catches, that kind of thing. Nothing to do with the nice salubrious area where your dignitaries will arrive from Cathay and so on. So it's a matter of drawing that coastline on and then cutting it so that I can stick it down on the board and start adding the rest. And this is what you're left with, really. So the backing board of wood and a nicely cut piece of grass, and then I've primed it black. I've got some nice offcuts of wallpaper that was sent to me by friends Alex and Carolina from Witch Art 3D. I used it on one of my previous boards, so I decided to just add a few areas of stonework towards one corner of the board. We're not that far out at the town centre of Marienburg here, so there's still going to be sort of built up areas, so it's just a way of representing that a little bit. So I've cut these sort of jagged shapes, but sort of matched in with the stonework, and I'm just gluing them in the opposite corner to where the actual water's going to be. And once they was glued down, I just added a little bit of glue around the edges and sprinkled a little bit of the muddy poor terrain sand that I've shown off in a previous video around the edges, just to blend it into the board. I'll be painting them a little bit later as well. Obviously not going to leave it this sparkly silver colour. Next up, I'm thinking about the water's edge and how I'm going to colour it. I've got this idea of using the clear plastic that comes with the frame as the basis of the water, and then put some resin on top of it, put some clear resin on top of it. So I thought, well, if I paint the underframe that I've sprayed black, put some colours down, put some blue and some greens down, so that shows through the clear plastic and then it'll show through the clear resin as well. It could be a really nice water effect, and by having that clear plastic, it's not even glass, it's a sort of a perspex kind of plastic on there, it will just give a nice water effect already, which I can really finish off. It'll be less heavy, less sort of fragile as well, and it's turned into something I've never thought of doing before, but it's a nice easy way of doing some water effects if you don't want to do sort of deep resin pours all the time, which can be really problematic. So that's what the board looks like with just the water effect put down. Then I've placed the plastic down on top and then glued the grass mat on top of that. A little bit shiny at the moment. Next stage is more of that muddy poor terrain sand mix, and I've done a whole shoreline with this stuff. Now there's no video of how to do this. If you look at my Viking ship tutorial recently, same method, go and watch that. It's quite a long process. And then adding some of the paint textures that I'm using on the basis of my miniatures, my army, and my partner's using on his army as well, just to blend it in. You see that little bit of a tide mark where I've used water to set that stand. That does disappear as the grass mat dries, but I'm just kind of blending it all in. And it depends what part of the world you live in. Quite often when you move up towards an estuary where the river starts to meet the sea, you get very muddy sand, and I want it to look a little bit like that, a bit grim and dirty rather than bright yellow sand. So this is the sort of the perfect job of the less salubrious areas of the docks, and I think it looks pretty good already. Before I pour the resin on and do that sort of things, I wanted to make sure that if there was anything else on the board to make it look a little bit more like a small dock area, at least some jetties and things. And that's when I turned to that Middle-earth strategy battle game kit. And as you can see, this is why I love it. This isn't the main building part, the main house part. These are all the jetties and the wooden walkways, loads of fish. You've got these lovely little boats as well, and it's such a versatile kit. I couldn't use this for armies on parade, or probably even Golden Demon now or something like that, because it's Middle-earth mixing with Warhammer the Old World, but it's absolutely fine when you're using it for something like this, because it's a Games Workshop miniature, so I can use it at Warhammer World. I'm just messing around here trying to work out the layout of the few jetties that I'd built. I wasn't too sure. I wanted to have a lot on there because it'd be a nice feature, but the other side I thought the water was going to look cool, and spoilers, it does look quite cool, but I just settled on something quite basic in the end, with just a couple of boats, a couple of jetties, and then one slightly smaller one as well, and I'm pretty happy with that. I also found this, look, I use it a lot. It's made from old Rohan house kits, and I just ages ago made it into this little shack, and I thought it'd be a perfect little fisherman's shack in the other corner there, just to add a little bit of something extra. But looking pretty good, but I need to get that wood painted. Unsurprisingly, I started the way I normally do for most of my paint jobs, black prime and then a zenithal with the airbrush with white, slowly building up the layers, leaving all the shadows in the recesses, and then I'll go on and do a little bit of a dry brush as well, really picking out all the detail in that wood grain, because that'll be important for the rest of the painting. After that is keeping it really, really simple, using my favourite method for doing wood, but I'm just blending 3 colours together, wet blending them on top of an already underpainted miniature. These are speed paints, contrast work fine for them as well. I like the army painted speed paints at the moment because they really run into the recesses very well. They're a little bit thinner, not quite as viscous. So I usually go for a dark brown, a mid brown or an orangey brown and a green. And you just wet blend them all together and you get this really nice sort of multi-toned wood effect, which afterwards I go on and just give it a quick dry brush. Sometimes you can then glaze back on top after that to tone it back down using something like Skeleton Horde if you need to. But at the end of the day, I want something that looks kind of damp, old, weathered wood, not something that you would make a nice side table out of. I super glued those in place. You do get little bits of frosting from the super glue onto the plastic that was already there, the plastic sort of perspex sheet from the frame. That's fine. I'm just sort of painting over them with little bits of sort of brown and green contrast paints just to dull it down a little bit and make it look a little bit like there's some rocks underneath the water. Remember, I'm going to be pouring some resin on top of this anyway, so that kind of hides all of that stuff. I just wanted to make sure nothing was showing through. Likewise, there's a couple of little marks where the backing board from behind, I've got little circles and things from the picture hooks and etc. So I've just glued rocks over those, knowing that when I pour the water in, the part of the rock will be showing. A couple of little finishing touches as well. There's a little fish at one end of the board, adding some oil washes on there just to change the tone a little bit, add a little bit of shading in certain areas, just to spruce it up really and make it look a little bit neater. Then it was on to the resin pour. I'm using UV resin just because it's so much easier to use. This is Let's Resin stuff from Amazon, and it was recommended by my friend Dan, who does the Hobby Hour podcast with me. Not to confuse him with Danny, my doubles partner for this event, but it went on really, really easily. It's only really a couple of mils thick, maybe 5 mils at its deepest, and you're just using this UV torch to sort of basically make it set, make it cure. It's thick enough that you can go right up to the edges and almost paint it on before you set it, so you can see there was no board around it at that point. But this is what it looks like with the frame on top. And I think it looks pretty cool, to be honest with you. I deliberately made it slightly wavy, and the way I did that was push into it with clay shapers and things as I was setting it. So I played with the surface so it wasn't completely flat, still water. There's a bit more on manipulating it in that Viking ship tutorial I did as well. That's why I've not gone into great detail here, but you see there's lots of little puddles and things there on the board as well, just to add a little bit more interest, to see that dampness coming through up into the shoreline, especially around the fisherman's cottage. And I really like it. I think it's really cool. It's a lot more simple than the Cathay board I did, but in many ways I prefer it. I think there's less bits I don't like. It looks a little bit more realistic, a little bit more sort of diorama, military modelling-esque. I put the miniatures back on. It looks like there's plenty of space for my partner's army, and I think we're nearly ready for me to go and paint the rest of the army. Now, the eagle-eyed of you may have spotted something else on that board, and that's my baggage, which I'm making from, or have made from, the Pontifex miniature from the Cities of Sigmar range. And I just wanted the guys carrying the sort of the treasure, basically. So the lore behind my Renegade Crowns is they are merchantmen, they're mercenaries, and they work for cash. They're very Dogs of War-ish themed. So I left off their heads, very Age of Sigmar-ish, trimmed off lots of Sigmar-y type symbols, left off the whole top. In the end of the day, they're just carrying a beer. And I dived into my Empire and my Bretonnian bits box, really, and started to find stuff that I could put on there. A couple of different heads that look quite burly. I think they're Knights of the White Wolf heads, or maybe they come from the militia kit, I can't remember. Added a barrel on there with a couple of money pouches and some bottles, and then loads of weapons and things. I like the idea that some of them will be ceremonial weapons worth lots of money, basically treasure stuff. So when I get around to painting it, I want to make it look all glittering. Why they're carrying around all their treasure like that on the battlefield, I don't know, but I couldn't find a big chest a treasure chest style miniature I can use. I know before you shout, there's loads of things that could 3D print, stuff from other model kits. I get it, I totally get it, but this is going to Warhammer World and it needs to be a GW miniature, so I didn't have that luxury. I may make another one in the future, but I couldn't think of a miniature that had a kind of treasure chest type thing, otherwise I'd have definitely gone with that. Now, I mentioned right at the beginning of the video that was adding a crew member to my Border Princess Bombard. I built it for my Bretonians, and one of the crew members I decided I didn't like as much and I wanted to change. And I've had this monkey from the Empire Sprue knocking around for ages. He is the powder monkey, funnily enough, and he's a very good powder monkey until he gets drunk. So you definitely don't want to get your powder monkey wet, because then he becomes dangerous. But fun miniature, stuck him on a bucket, which I'm going to be adding some resin to as well. I haven't done so at this stage, but it just becomes a fun extra crew member to go with the miniatures that I already painted. Those got well over a year ago now for that project. There is a video for that. I won't link it because it's so long ago I can't really find it, but find it if you want to. The other miniatures, one's from Age of Sigmar, one's a Bretonian kit bash, and it's the Age of Sigmar cannon with all of the stuff taken off. I know lots of people have been using this as their Border Prince's Bombard, but the star of the show, in my mind anyway, is the powder monkey. He's really cool. I'm glad I've found an excuse to get him in an army. Of course, my partner has been painting his army as well, and I'm not sure what his finalised list was or whether he wants me to share it. I'm sure he wouldn't mind actually, but without asking permission now while I'm recording this video, I'm going to show you some of the pictures that he has shared to me anyway, and I've put them on little backgrounds and things so you can see what he's been working on. I know he's been adding to an existing Marienburg army, so I've got two different pictures of cannons here. I'm not sure he's taken both or one now in his final list, but his road wardens he's just finished here. He's definitely taking. I love them. They're really, really cool. I can't wait to get mine done for Noel. And that's what they look like on the movement tray he's made for them. Really, really cool. Big movement tray, but all that scenic stuff around it is just perfect. There's another one of his cannons as well. And I know some of the stuff he's going to be using from his existing army, so I will share all of his army on the roundup video that I make in the future. And this is his latest work in progress that he sent me before I started making the video on their movement tray, his own archers as well, and they look really cool. And I know he's adding lots of fun stuff to the back, like fences and things like that. So that's where we're at right now. I've got one big job really is to paint those Manan's blades, and that I'm planning to make a video that will hopefully come out before the event at the end of the month. Aside from that, I've got the prints to paint as well. That is very unlikely to become a video, and I've also got to paint the baggage, and that won't be a video either. As much as I love making painting videos, they're not as popular as some of the other kinds of videos on the channel, so I have to balance the painting ones versus the chatty ones these days. That's just the way YouTube works and the algorithm works and things. I probably won't be making another of these sort of road to doubles videos. I might do updates on my Patreon and in my Discord as well. So if you're really excited to see it, head over and look at those. But I will make a video when I come back from the event, which shows both armies all set up on the display board, because that'll be a really, really cool thing to see it all together as it's intended. So I will bring a bit of a rundown, a report of the event, how it went, how I get on, and what I thought of it. And with that, there will be, as I say, final pictures of all the things that you haven't seen fully painted yet. But if you have enjoyed this video, give it a like, drop a comment below. Please comment about what you think I should do for that next 1,000 points for the army and potentially beyond. Any ideas are welcome. There's a strong link to Marienburg and Manan's blades and theme of the leadership of the army, but they will be hide swords for anyone, and I quite like the idea that the units can come from anywhere in the known world. In fact, someone is making me a BSB and they will come from Arabe, so that's something for the future as well on the channel, something to look out for in the coming month or so, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know when I'm getting it, but that will be a painting video and a bit of an interview with someone, so something to look out for there. So anything goes with that, so really, really open to any suggestions. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and as I've already said, check out the Discord, check out my Patreon. It's a great way of supporting me and the channel making videos like this, and I'm very, very grateful to all my existing patrons on there who support me. You guys really are the best. And check out the channel sponsor, Counterattack Bases. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.